Welcome to my channel, The Magic of Java. This is my third book called The Londo and the Green Queen's Revenge. It's a novel. It's a novel about me coming to terms with the attempted destruction of an Englishman and his Javanese family. But it is a novel. Yes, it's based on experience. It's based on real people and celebrities, but amalgams of real people or caricatures of them. So if you do identify yourself, please forgive me, because it's only intended as a yarn. The Musholla. Shortly after returning home from Lebanon, Widiati called to say that the water pump had broken once more. She asked if she could get it repaired and if I would send her the money. But after 10 days she was still going to a friend's home to shower and presumably go to the toilet. You see, I have a 22-year-old son and a 23-year-old stepdaughter who would rather travel 6 kilometres for a shower than arrange to get theirs fixed. Pitt the Younger was Prime Minister at 24. I was a sales manager for a company within one of the UK's largest conglomerates at 23 and already bought and sold my first home. But neither of these siblings show any inclination towards independence. I needed to go to Jakarta soon anyway, so Mas Predictor and I decided to go to repair the house and arrange for a truck to take some of our possessions to Gunung Kidul, especially Maua's karaoke machine and the missing deeds to our home in Gunung Kidul. Widiati seemed depressed when she called her mum, but I don't think the broken pump was the reason. Finally she confided that she had not had much success in looking for a job, but she'd only been looking for 10 days and never rises before 3 in the afternoon. It occurred to me that Branwell's depression and suicidal thoughts were because he'd been rejected for the only job he's ever applied for. Or was it another force affecting him? At least I can talk to Widiati and give her some encouragement. But she was already depressed from having her mother snatched from her and seeing our family totally destroyed. She managed to pick herself up to complete her degree, but now the full horror of the destruction of our family and her life was apparent. If all this wasn't bad enough, she had split up from her boyfriend of 3 years. He claimed it was because she was Muslim and he Catholic. Whilst Maua was talking to Widiati, I got an email from Branwell saying that I had to go to speak to his mother, as she'd cancelled his rent payments, more or less suggesting to me that it once again using him to harm me. Or am I caught up in a conspiracy whose goals and logic have not been disclosed to me? So this is the warning that I received when praying. For the first time, it included Widiati. In the middling years of my life, I feel I've been badly betrayed on 3 occasions. 3 occasions which have dramatically influenced my life. Firstly, when nobody had a hand in destroying my apartment in Manchester, before we had even finished decorating it, people I considered my friends prevented it from being repaired and thwarted my efforts to get recompense, so that for nearly 20 years we lived in a building site. I recall being sent an article anonymously. It was about forgiveness and the negative effects of holding grudges. Secondly, the manipulation and indeed mental abuse my partners subjected me to for over 20 years. Finally, the poisoning of Maua, Titi and I. As a result of the poisoning, I have learned that forgiveness is the best possible response. Even though I'm about to embark on another trip to Jakarta, I find it hard to truly release Paete and Omuni. I simply don't want to see them. As for my former partner, she suffered enough when I left her for Maua. In fact, I delighted, if only fleetingly, in causing her pain as she had me, which is more an illustration of the degree to which my mind and normal behaviour had been manipulated and destroyed. Although after giving another every opportunity to behave reasonably, and they don't, I cut them off completely, never talking to them again. As I later found, so too does Mauer. I'd already forgiven my former partner, but I'd no intention of communicating with her, despite Branwell wanting me to mediate between him and her. The destruction of my Manchester apartment was a long time ago. The main culprit died young. Of course I can forgive him. There exists an amazing symmetry to these events, both their causes and effects, not least as I now realise that I may have played a part in the early death of the culprit, as when his subterfuge became apparent, I left a message on his answer phone wishing him dead. Of course, at the time I had no idea, nor even real desire, that some 15 years later my wish would be granted. So were all these messages sent to me so that I should learn forgiveness, to realise that forgiveness is a strength and not a weakness. I now know that we become what we don't forgive, and therein lies its importance. Certainly we learn best from experience, particularly painful experience. So these 3 incidents are not limited, but parts of my learning. They also suggest this is a lesson that I have not learned in another universe. Some might describe this as a past life. Maybe even that I've been selfish and greedy and taken from others as others have attempted to take from me, or that I have betrayed friends as they have betrayed me. This was what Martin meant when he talked to the deeds of my ancestors. He might actually mean my ancestors, but I now interpret this to mean the parallel me's. This is because I, and I alone, am responsible for all that happens to me. I have already learned to forgive, but no, I must take real responsibility for my thoughts and actions. It would seem that I was slow to learn these lessons, as the money to decorate my apartment had not been in turn earned entirely through entirely honest work, and my former partner and Branwell felt betrayed by me when I left them for Mauer. Or more precisely, Branwell feels betrayed by me leaving him with his mother. Legally there was little I could do, but maybe I could have been stronger for him. But I arrived in Indonesia, having suffered from 20 years of abuse and mind games. I was weak. Maddie soothed my sadness, and I was fleetingly happy until greed snatched her from me. Now I must correct the situation I created with Branwell, as my new religious faith has created a new beginning for me, a beginning that I am now all too aware of, and also aware of my previous procrastination will make Branwell's challenges so resilient. Forgiveness is so important because it's the key to changing the polarity of your aggressor and nullifying the cause of your pain. But this pain is simply a reflection of one's pride, so we need to see the challenges as a gift and allowing us to change and prepare for our own deaths. We forgive, we reduce our pride, understand ourselves, and we become closer to God. As this is not within our gift to evaluate the severity of misdemeanours, either those committed by us or to us, we simply need to ask for forgiveness for those we committed, even if we believed it was justified and in retaliation. To not forgive and to see the transgression as others as more severe is to take on the persona of the victim, which we may never recover from. Mauer was troubled by a first nightmare since being admitted to the hospital in Claton, completely manic from our poisoning. Nothing too frightening, just a cat trying to scratch her, and I was able to comfort her once more. So with reduction of psychotropic medication, Mauer was indeed returning to normal, with emotional highs and lows, so unlike the chemically lobotomized Mauer I had reluctantly become used to. She was naturally worried and concerned about Widati, but again this was a perfectly normal reaction for a caring mother, which Mauer needs to become once more. Maddie had her highs and lows, but controlled them well, so unlike my former partner, and I am looking forward to Mauer's new highs and even her lows. Bude and Maspradipta went to visit brother number 2 in Chandi, and Maura and I made love in the afternoon for the first time in around 9 months. We both became aware of what we had lost and what we had been forced to give up, resolving once again to find a special time for each other. In fact, I have now been feeling restless, wondering if I can really live a simple life in Gunung and that afternoon I realised that of course I could. We had previously found a way to live in Jakarta and ignore its minor irritations, and it's such a simple solution. Nevertheless, it was a further 8 months before Maura's libido returned, meaning that our intimacy was snatched from us for some 15 months. Home is not where you were born. Home is where all your attempts to escape cease. Najib Mahfouz. Night bus with Maspradipta was fairly uneventful. At Wunasari, one of the hawkers who enters the bus at the terminal turned out to be related to Maspradipta, and therefore, I guess, also to me. The driver had a new Naila Charisma video, which contained a song in which he mentions Wunasari. It was welcome to hear some new songs, but I sort of missed the old ones. At Kabuman Services, the men's toilets had been demolished, and we had to use the ladies. I was shocked to find that not only was there nowhere to poo, there was nowhere to have a pee. The cubicle had a large bokmandi containing water, which I guess most Westerners would have attempted to pee into, but I've been in Indonesia long enough to know this to be taboo. No, under the door was a groove in the floor, so ladies are expected to crouch down and pee on the floor, using the bokmandi to wash themselves on the floor. Of course, the pump breaking raised suspicions of foul play by Omyuni. With Widati having been in Gunung Kidul, it was another opportunity to poison our well. Much later we returned to a blocked waste pipe, which had dumped raw sewage into our bathroom. Again I had my doubts about the cause, but without the pump in use, they probably just needed priming again. Also the most likely cause of the blocked waste pipe. I need to think positively, at a higher vibration, and all will be fine. In fact, it probably was natural causes, as the same thing happened last hot season, with the pump being blocked by sand, and then completely blocked as soon as it was repaired. Indeed, water shortages are becoming more common in Jakarta during the dry season, due to the over-extraction of groundwater. But Maspradipta is a master at dealing with such things. Less welcome was the sight of an old door dumped against our house. Mentioning this higher vibration or level of consciousness and my certainty that I have reached it. But you will be asking yourself, how? Well, nothing is immediate. It takes time, especially when you sink to the depths that I had. But I've been praying 5 times a day for nearly a year. Each time I do so, I meditate for a while and open my chakras. Now I'm not sure of the importance or even the validity of opening my chakras, nor indeed any activities, but I do know that when repeated for some time, something works. As a result of neuroplasticity, it is possible to change the brain through some activities which exercise parts of the brain that have not been used frequently. I've not drunk alcohol for 10 months. I've only smoked the occasional kritek over the last 8 months. And also for 8 months, I've lived in a healthy, safe environment in the mountains. My mind is clear and I'm thinking positively. I have forgiven my adversaries and certainly do not seek revenge. I'm filled with love. But this doesn't end. I find myself instinctively cooking vegetarian food as an alternative to Buddha's sweet Javanese meat diet. So what are these vibrations I keep mentioning? They are a simple resonance which can be detected within everything, including our own neurons. Of course, I will admit that maybe the true purpose of my new activities is to focus my mind and provide positive mental framework for my thoughts. Just as I have argued that magic can focus the mind. Indeed, many of the activities I engage in have a commonality with magic, especially as practiced in Indonesia. Nevertheless, these activities really have worked for me, and I am dedicated to continuing with them. One indication that they have worked is that I perform tests on the brain's hemisphere. I find that my right brain is now dominant, which I suspect means that I can enter the second half of my life. My ability to suppress the self only being possible from the age of 34 for a male, but occurring much later in most people, myself included, and increasingly not at all to those of us in the West. Only 2 years ago I would have told you that all this is psychobabble, New Age bullshit, but honestly it isn't. As I say, I cannot identify what works and what doesn't. There are no shortcuts nor quick fixes. A commitment to a lifetime routine is what is important. I say that I would have said that it was bullshit, and I would, but if I'm truthful deep down, I've always known that we get what we wish for, but never realised the power of this and how much stronger it is when it is based on fear. I think most of us at a subconscious level also know this to be true, but we have learned not to vocalise the seemingly irrational from the dark sarcasm of the classroom, but realising that we really can change our environment only adds to my conviction that we're playing in a game, having somewhat rejected the paranormal explanations. The alternative explanation is not that we get what we wish for, but that we can see the future. So if we wish to be successful in business, maybe this is simply our future coming to us and informing our wishes. Certainly this interpretation has more resonance with scientific theories on time, but maybe not with quantum entanglement. It seems to me that time and free will are the greatest intellectual problems for science, philosophy, religion, especially within Islam, and magic. Maybe the solution lies in the timeline, and that determinism and free will are a scale with no definitive poles. In fact, maybe the timeline is also crucial in explaining the other veils or dimensions and the entities they contain. For if time isn't linear, surely it is possible that we can access them, if only in our mind. After all, if time isn't linear, what are ghosts? I'm increasingly drawn to the theory that we constantly shift our realities with every decision we take. So each new reality is constrained by our beliefs, generating a new relationship with the permutations which already exist and have done since creation. Perhaps the biggest constraint on our beliefs are the constructs we call time and space. For without the linearity of time, everything and anything is possible. This was how I could jump so far as a child, and Mauer could move through time and space. We did not enter the spirit world, but simply abandoned the constraints of space and time. So moving to a higher vibration and filling our lives with happiness and love really does move us to a new, happy and loving reality. Indeed, we can use the technique of jumping to travel back, and to create a new or future reality. Amazing though these seem, it is simply imagine a different past, which will compete with the old past. Both are absolutely true and untrue. We simply focus on the past we want to be. This would also explain how Parcano and I saw entities in the same part of the garden, and with all other times when interactions with others don't seem to fit my models, in particular how I influence in others and how others influence me. It is simply in a reality which we have accepted is possible that such interactions exist. In many other realities they don't. Our interactions with others are real, but we each perceive them differently. We can either include these people in our new realities or exclude them. We can modify the behaviour or keep them as it is. So some need to believe in the paranormal, ghosts and black magic to explain the seemingly unexplainable in the reality they perceive. But even these, like science and space and time, are constraints on our thinking and therefore our realities. So where are these realities? Probably they are here. After all, our brain can only process 5% of what we are told is out there. Although if everything is mental, then we need to look no further than our consciousness, and then admit to the possibility that even this is an abstraction, a simplification to allow us, or should I say, to understand. Such a theory would also reduce the contraction between predetermination and free will. For every reality was laid out during creation, but we have free will to move and choose between these realities. So maybe Swedenborg was right when he said, heaven and hell are our own creations. God does not judge us as we judge ourselves based on our beliefs, and we resign others to either heaven or hell. But then in each reality another you exists, so some are destined for heaven and others for hell. A frightening thought, but maybe the soul has free will to choose which reality it inhibits, and that the other yous are mere bit players in another soul's heaven and hell. At this junction, allow me to call them realities. Maybe the many worlds or universe, rather than many worlds or universes, as it seems to me, as like the double split particles, they may simply be a probability wave. The observations, along with many nuances, especially my Muslim faith, I believe distance me from slopslism, although I'm dangerously close, which is why I must also keep reminding myself not to be preoccupied with the self and the ego. Physicists acknowledge that all objects resonate and therefore have their own unique vibrations. But these vibrations and their governing waveforms appear to have a profound influence on us. Indeed, it is these vibrations which ultimately determine our reality. Indication of the importance of resonance and cycles that science cannot yet adequately explain include when women live in the same households, their menstrual cycles converge. Mauer later claimed that her cycle regulates for February being a short month. Maybe this is related to how women in Indonesia menstruate for 2 weeks or more during Ramadan. That lunar cycles affect mental health. My mother tells of a man from Minsterley who would lead a normal life, was even a church warden, but at every full moon he would disappear to the cabbage patch. Although it has been hypothesized that this is due to the influence of magnetic fields, which may somewhat explain the cyclical phenomenon. Certain sounds can raise or lower blood pressure, indeed appear to affect our overall health. As a teenager, I began to embrace Newtonian materialism and to atomise my life, cutting out activities which no longer seemed productive nor relevant, until in Birmingham I eventually became a money-making machine, and therefore susceptible to addictions and problems which eventually consumed me. It is the same process that has meant the closure of psychiatric institutions, with Branwell being left without care, and which closed our youth clubs. Even in my day, a few ping-pong tables and a record player endlessly repeating Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell's "Two Can Have a Party" was hardly worth fighting over, although it didn't prevent us from doing so, and wonderful though Marvin and Tammy were in duet. But after Mrs. Thatcher had taken these away, we have been left to pick up the pieces of generations of young people who have so little interaction with others, or indeed nature. A self-fulfilling prophecy that there is no such thing as society. But if we are constantly tested on a higher vibration, you cannot maintain it if consumed by greed, anger, fear, or simple anxiety. This is the purpose of the myriad of problems I have had from both the UK and the Indonesian government, banks, utility and phone companies. Their tests to reduce my vibration. Even driving too fast and aggressively will lower our vibrations. So every day we negotiate our level, and every day we need time through prayer or meditation to maintain the level of our vibration. Carrefour in Block M to buy many things, including olives, which I can no longer find at Carrefour in Jogja. But Carrefour is changed and I couldn't find anything. I know it happens often enough in the UK, but it actually seemed as though they no longer stocked a variety of European products like oregano and olives. It was only when I found that the bread had been moved to a ludicrous store within a store at the entrance that the penny dropped. It was the same as in Jogja. Like Carrefour Jogja, they no longer sell all those European products. There's no alcohol, and even the meat and fish selection are poor. Apparently the licence agreement with Carrefour is coming to an end, and the owners have bought out Carrefour in Indonesia and are rebranding Carrefour as Transmart. It is overall, however, a reflection on how Indonesia is turning its back on the West and Western products. Indeed, as I looked out of the taxi on my way home, I spotted so many new Japanese and Korean fast food outlets. Of course, Jakarta still has plenty of American fast food cafes, and KFC remains the most popular brand. It is apparent that no new ones are opening. I eventually gained the courage to pray at the Musholla, and before I had reached the end of a gang, there was Tukang Warung on his way to the Musholla. Tukang Jarrett was also there, and along with the caretaker from Puncak, who'd always been so friendly towards me. But the main imam, who had helped relieve my swollen legs and conspired against me, was not there. Indeed, a new imam led the prayers. I attended again the next day, and things were much the same. So eventually I have exercised my deepest fears and can offer forgiveness. I felt at ease in the Musholla on the gang, and on the way to the Musholla, a gang which only 4 months previously had racked me with fear, on which I could feel an evil presence. Everybody seemed so welcoming, as they had been when I first started praying there over a year ago. I began to wonder if I had been wrong about the conspiracy. I am sure that the imam engaged in some sort of mischief against me. Or was it aimed at Mawa? Maybe they really did believe it was Mawa who had poisoned me and was using black magic to kill me. After all, it is apparent that such negative gossip has been generated in the kampung about Mawa, and this scenario would certainly explain a lot. Nevertheless, the imam has taken things into his own hands, behaving in a godlike manner. Or is this simply an explanation I find more palatable than the evil conspiracy I was once so sure of? For some reason, I now find myself remembering my dreams much more than previously. Despite it being possible to interpret most of these dreams in a negative way, I don't. I simply believe that my mind is coming to terms with the dramatic events of the last 2 years. In one dream I was reminded that prior to Mawa moving out of our home in Jakarta, I was approached at the Musholla by a young man claiming to be Muni's brother. He certainly looked like Muni, in fact like a younger version of him, including his Joe 90 spectacles. Maddie had told me that Muni was from the same place as Mina, so I asked this man if he was from Boyolali, but he corrected me, saying Solo or Surakarta, which is where Muni is actually from. Despite this overpowering evidence, Muni told Mawa that he didn't have a brother and that he must have been a relative of the other Uni in the kampong, whom we were completely unaware of. At the time, I was not sure that the brother had been called to Jakarta to spy on us, but his clandestine role had not been revealed to him. But I wonder if this was Muni's benevolent persona sent to me to understand there is good and bad in all, and I can see the good in Muni, my problems will disappear. He may even have been a ghost of Muni's dead brother. Not that I know he had a dead brother, or another spirit sending me this message. Of course, the message may also have been directed at Muni himself, as Maua had told him of my meeting. Over a year later, I saw his brother again in Jakarta and confirmed that he has substance, unlike any ghost I've ever seen. Then a year after this, I spotted Bar Annie outside our gate with Andy and his friends, but later found that it was her long-haired brother. I have long believed that the answers I seek can be found at the Musholla, and maybe that is how I should interpret this incident of Muni's brother. Maybe there is much more to my experience than the poisoning that I am aware of. Now I have overcome my fear of the Musholla, I must explore what it is that I'm being led towards. When I returned to Jakarta to once again repair the water pump, I prayed at the Musholla as much as I could, even managing 5 times in one day. In fact, the Musholla really now is a masjid and much better attended. I began to realise that most, if not all, of the worshippers were not unlike those at the Musholla by Maua's cost. They had taken me to their hearts, and I was something of a celebrity in our little community. Of course, as a celebrity, I was a target for every greedy, deranged residence, but I should not judge all by the few. Indeed, the evening before I was leaving for Gunung I was invited to a Selamatan. I didn't attend, but this was just how it had been in the neighbourhood by Maua's cost. One day, there at the masjid was the imam, who had helped relieve the swelling from my leg, but also who had given me poisoned food one evening. We greeted each other as old friends, which we were, and as long as I believe this, we are. However, my conviction in positive thinking was challenged when Paate appeared at the Musholla the next day. Was this another plot against me and my family? What would they do next? Later, I found that there had been some event at the Musholla, possibly with the madrasa, so Paate would have been required in his role as Erte. Remaining positive, and everything turns out well. I reminded that one of my divinations was that I would find a solution to my problems in the Musholla, and maybe over a year after this divination I have. You see, I have shown forgiveness, and that I am an important member of the kampung. You might see Muni and Paate trying to kill me as a rite of passage as a foreigner. If you laugh it off, the kampung will accept me, much in the same way as the Windrush generation were expected to find being called a wog amusing. For once they did. They were accepted as a Brit, even as a black Manc, black Scouser or black Yorkshireman. More than this, showing myself as a member of the kampung and a devout Muslim, I have bought a degree of protection should Jakarta descend into the chaos I am anticipating. True, it will be far easier to locate me in the kampung, but I really do believe that my neighbours will vouch for me as being nearly Indonesian, and certainly a devout Muslim, should that day ever come. But hopefully I will be in Gunung Kidul should Jakarta descend into the anarchy I am now so fearful of. Nevertheless, like the Windrush generation, I have learnt that the real racists are the middle class, for despite their reticence at being openly racist, it is ultimately the middle class who exclude and discriminate against me on grounds of my colour, or lack of it. Maybe there is much more than I have learnt than this, and that this is that I no longer fear that Jakarta will descend into anarchy. Then it won't, or at the very least it won't affect me. Just as over a year ago I learned not to fear the ghost of Joe Suchong, I must also learn not to fear those who hate foreigners, for like Suchong, they're frightened and need my compassion. because we really can change the world and our trajectory simply through our thoughts. Certainly, if enough good people reject hatred which is being fueled in Indonesia, then Indonesia can escape the cycle of communal violence, authoritarian regimes, greed and poverty. I allowed Muni and Pahangabaya to use their mental determination to influence my own thinking, albeit clouded by lead. They were able to change my polarity and move me towards a lower vibration. But now it is apparent to all who meet me that I am back on a higher vibration, and those wishing me harm will keep their distance, including those seeking to harm foreigners. Is it as though my higher vibration is my protective shield? It is not that I can overcome future attacks. They simply won't care. My other divination was that I could learn something in Banten, and whilst at the time it did not seem like that I had, on reflection, maybe there were two important lessons coming from our trips to Banten. The first was that on both occasions we were duped by Paustads, and that we should have learned a lot quicker not to be so trusting of people simply because they taught Islam. Of course, had we learned this, we might have avoided being taken in by Paustad from Jemba. The same is true of Dukan. But that was not a lesson from Banten. But the second lesson was that in Banten I was told by a ghost to pray 5 times a day and approach Allah with an open heart. Now, since then, I have done many things, including giving up drinking and smoking, meditated, opened my chakras, and yes, prayed 5 times most days. I cannot say which are the most important of these behavioural changes, but in combination they have shifted my polarity to a higher vibration, although the results are far from immediate. I am a far happier person as a result of this message. Nevertheless, I keep coming back to the self, despite intellectually comprehending there is no self. With every loop, the self or the ego returns. A more bizarre connection with Banten is that Serang was home of the Jellyfish Kingdom sect, where their queen, Aisa Tusumala Bayaduri Intan, claimed that she could access a bank account in Switzerland which contained all the treasures of Indonesia. Was Aisha Tusumala Bayaduri Intan also the victim of poisoning and hypnosis? Surely Pahangabaya could not also have been behind this crime. Well, that concludes this chapter from my book, The Londo and the Green Queen's Revenge, which is my 3rd book in the series. I do hope you've enjoyed it. I'm hoping to add further chapters about every week, and so far I've managed to do this. If you'd like to hear more from me, then please subscribe and hit the bell. That way you get notifications of when a new chapter is released. In addition, I don't seem to be working very well with these algorithms on YouTube, and my videos really aren't being promoted as they should. So if you could also hit the like button and sort of make some comments, I think that will help me to get noticed. I hate to ask you that, but I really do need more viewers. But thank you for this viewing. Thank you so much.